Get this, this force was so strong that at the neighbor's house, look at these windows. It blew out the windows, the sheer force of the blast. But we've been tracking power outages all throughout the day. And it's not doing it right now, but these power lines, they've been moving and the wind has been knocking that power out and to the driver's seat of this car. So I can't answer phone calls, I can't send texts, I can't scroll on my phone. All of that is considered distracted driving. But what's actually wrong with the post-tension cables, picture it like this. So there's supposed to be no slack in them, and right here you can see it's strung really tightly. But upon a routine inspection this summer, they realized there was some slack in there. Choose to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour, we would still fall short of a living wage. And a living wage just means you have enough money to maintain a normal standard of living. And then once they do that, all eyes on the big screen, watching some national and local coverage, watching all of those precincts reporting, all of the numbers come in, anxiously waiting to see who the winner is going to be. There were shots fired at a Trump rally. We are watching the NBC special report as we speak. Take a look at this video. So what happens now? Well, the jury did recommend to the judge the maximum sentence for Wilson on each offense, which is a life sentence. I was speaking to Wilson's legal team in between that time, and they did tell me they plan to file for a new trial. They will submit that motion to the judge, and if the judge approves it, we'll just start this whole thing over. But if he disapproves of that, they are eligible to file for an appeal after the sentencing.
Is a company that just eats off its people, and then it just keeps on. And when there's an opportunity to eat more, they do it.
That seems like a lot, you know. Times are tough.
Two reactions to Ameren's proposed rate hike, and if passed, will cost you more at the flip of a light switch.
We're having a hard time. We're having a hard time paying our bills.
Chad Langle was at the meeting, and he's married and a father of two. And he says passing this increase will make the already hard choices even harder.
We've already been making some hard choices for quite a while.
The rate increase would be about $210 more per year. But switching services isn't an option.
That we don't have any other competition or other choices to pick from.
Warren Wood is Ameren, Missouri's Vice President of Regulatory and Legislative Affairs, and he says the cost is due to service expansion.
We're also bringing in some new energy services, some new energy projects that are generating electricity for customers. Put that together, ends up bringing up some cost of service.
But disconnections have also risen sharply for Ameren's customers in Missouri in recent years. In 2024, from March to November, just over 90,000 customers experienced disconnections. I then asked Woods, why raise rates when people are struggling?
Yeah, we're seeing increases in cost everywhere, all the different electricity, a lot of different inflation impacts across the economy. That's where we focus on making sure we're investing wisely and then making sure we're reaching out and being available to customers.
Do you think you're being available and affordable to customers by raising your rates?
Yes, we are providing reliable service and we are keeping our rates low.
The third and final day of a 1984 rape case wrapped up in Columbia today, and we have a verdict. Good evening, everyone. I'm Evie Allen.
And I'm Taylor Freeman. Thank you so much for joining us here tonight. James Frederick Wilson was found guilty of forcible rape and first-degree assault. KMU8's Eric Lovelace has been covering the case this week, and he'll head us off and wrap up the case for us.
Over the past 3 days, 11 witnesses entered the doors of this courtroom and testified in this case. But compelling evidence.
Providence was kind of a public street.
Body cam footage where Wilson appears to confess to committing this crime.
And I had a pocket knife, so I used the pocket knife, kind of forced her in the car.
Which broke the case wide open. And on the final day, Lauren Matheson taking the stand, and she was responsible for developing the DNA profile, saying the likelihood of the DNA being someone else's
1 in 101 octillion. That's 101 with 27 zeros after it.
Is a long shot. And then in closing arguments, the prosecutor speaking emphatically to the jury, saying this was a violent, cold-blooded offense.
This was not a sex act. This was a violent, forcible rape at knife point.
A verdict more than 40 years in the making.
The jury find the defendant, James Wilson, guilty of forcible rape.
This is what he looked like around that time, and this is what he looks like today. hearing his fate. Lead prosecutor Susan Barisi responding to a question, has justice been served?
I do. I hope that the jury's verdict allows our victim to sleep in peace tonight and every night.
Speaking to young women everywhere.
Everyone remembered her and the horrific nature of her injury. Don't give up hope that justice will be had for you.
Yes, I was watching both Wilson and the victim as this sentence came down. Wilson really didn't change his facial expression very much, but the victim, very relieved, shedding tears, hugging those closest to her, obviously showing great signs of relief. Well, so what happens now? Well, the jury did recommend to the judge the maximum sentence for Wilson on each offense, which is a life sentence. I was speaking to Wilson's legal team in between that time, and they did tell me they plan to file for a new trial. They will submit that motion to the judge, and if the judge approves it, we'll just start this whole thing over. But if he disapproves of that, they are eligible to file for an appeal after the sentencing. And that sentencing will occur in early March. That's all we got for now. Live in Columbia, Eric Lovelace, KMU8 News. Yeah, Evie, so if you look behind me, I'll walk you through SAPA's history in the Missouri legislature. So SAPA became law in 2021, and it remained in effect until late August of 2024 when the U.S. 8th Circuit Court ruled it unconstitutional, claiming that it invalidated federal law. And now, House Republicans are trying to write this into law, citing a protection of freedoms, but some legislators and law enforcement worry this may make the protection of Missouri communities even harder.
And there are a lot of people in our state who feel like the federal government's got too powerful, that it's gone too far.
That's Republican Representative Bill Hardwick, who is sponsoring round 2 of the Second Amendment Preservation Act. He says he's written around what the court ruled was unconstitutional.
What we do is we kind of matched up with the Senate version.
Okay.
Both the House and Senate have the same version.
Okay.
And kind of make it clean and simpler.
However, House Democrat David Smith disagrees.
The old SAPA is moving its way through the courts right now. So it's too early to file another one until we find out what's going on with the original.
Smith opposes both versions of this bill.
Basically handcuffing local law enforcement. So why are we coming in and telling them they cannot? We're actually taking away the freedom of counties and states in Missouri.
Sheriff departments and police departments have spoken against this legislation, including Sheriff David Parrish of Lewis County, speaking at a hearing late last month.
This type of legislation will hamper and create major obstacles for our officers and our deputies throughout the state to go and catch these bad guys.
Additionally, other law enforcement agencies have pointed to issues the law creates when working with federal agencies. Captain Brian Lear of the Boone County Sheriff's Office echoed this in our past reporting, saying, quote, "We fully support the Second Amendment, but the reality of the law was that it severely hurt our ability to cooperatively work with the ATF to address criminals committing violent crime." And Columbia Police Chief Jill Schluty referenced SAPA when talking about CPD's recent purchase of a new gun ID technology, saying, quote, "We had this piece of technology a few years ago, and then the Second Amendment Preservation Act was passed by the state legislature. And that really impacted our relationships with our federal partners." In Jefferson City, Eric Lovelace, KMU8 News.
Looked, and it was like 2:45, and everything started. I heard this loud, god-awful boom.
A rude awakening on a frigid November night.
Because the cold air was just pouring in the house. It still is.
Luana Hagner lives directly next to this house that exploded, and she says it's been a little harder to keep warm after the blast blew out her windows. But she says her son has been working around the clock to keep her warm.
My son is my angel. He takes care of me like you wouldn't believe.
Her son, Kirk Smith, came as soon as she called.
About 3 in the morning that day, or 4 in the morning, and worked till about 7, 8 o'clock that night, and then the next day, right away, hell, I don't even know what today is.
And Hagner says even though she lost some of her collectibles, she's just glad her neighbors made it out of the blast.
At least he's alive. And that's the most important thing.
And while it was a close call for Hagner, a little bit of humor is keeping her spirits high.
Oh, no, I'm pretty darn strong for an 80-year-old broad.
You seem sure like it. Have you called?
And for her son, the hard labor isn't so hard for someone he loves so much.
She's the best woman in the world. You can ask anybody. they'll all agree with me.